Hello everyone, this is Yana Smakula. Welcome back to my channel. In this video, I'm sharing 3 of my favorite and most used die cutting techniques. These are very simple and will work with most dies out there. I have 3 card ideas to show you, each showcasing at least one of those techniques. If you are new to die cutting, I highly recommend you give these a try. You're going to love them. And if you've been die cutting for several years now, you've probably already tried them all. But it's never a bad idea to try an old technique again. So let's roll. My number 1 favorite die cutting technique is negative die cutting. And it is as simple as it sounds. Instead of using a positive die cut piece, the pop out piece, you use what is left behind, a negative piece. This technique works best with some pre-planning in mind. For example, I want to create a negative die cut silhouette on this background. And this is a panel of sea glass cardstock from Simon Says Stamp. I have foiled my skinny strip background plate on this paper in gold foil, covering the entire panel. And the panel is cut to 4 by 5¼ inches, so just the perfect size to go on an A2 card, and it will have a small white border around it once I adhere it. So I want to create a negative silhouette image in the center of my panel. I placed the cameo die from Spellbinders and I tried to center it as best as I could on this panel. Next, I added pieces of low-tack tape to secure the die in place. I made sure not to place the tape over the foiling, as the sticky part of the tape will lift some of that foil, and I don't want that to happen. I took this to my die cutting machine and I cut it. Sorry I did that off camera. My die cutting machine is platinum from Spellbinders and it's pretty big, and I have it sitting off to the side and it doesn't actually fit in my video frame. But all I did was just basic die cutting. Now I have 2 pieces, the positive silhouette piece and the negative background panel. All I need to do is layer the panel over a solid color background. In this case, this is going to be white, a white card base, and the negative pops. So you can use many of your dies in this way. Instead of using the positive die cut, think about the space that's left behind and how you can incorporate that into your card. To finish this card, I've already die cut additional pieces using the same cameo die from Spellbinders. I have the wreath cut from white and gold mirror cardstock, as well as the gold scarf and bow and pretty flowers cut from yellow and pale pink cardstock. I'm going to quickly assemble these die cuts and we'll show you the finished card, or you can just jump to the second die cut technique if you don't want to see the card assembly. I added glue. I'm using my favorite Barely Art glue to adhere the white wreath onto the gold, and I'm trying to match up the die cuts as best as possible so just a fraction of the gold shows from underneath the white. The gold only creates a subtle shadow for this piece. Off camera, I also die cut 3 additional white wreath layers from scrap white cardstock. I adhered them together and adhered from the back of my wreath instead of using foam adhesive. The wreath die cut is pretty detailed, and using foam adhesive here would take quite a long time for me to cut the foam into smaller pieces. Using scrap die cuts makes the wreath a lot sturdier, and this is how I prefer my dainty die cuts to be. But this does add weight onto the card, making the postage a little bit more expensive. So this is something to consider if you plan to mail your card. Now I can adhere the wreath onto the card over the negative opening, framing it. Now I have the flowers cut for the wreath as well. And before I add them, I'm going to shape them a little bit using a medium-sized stylus. I have this flower shaping tool in my stash. I'm not sure who makes it. I actually quite rarely use this particular tool. I usually use the stylus attachments for my tool-in-one, but today I couldn't find the largest stylus attachment, so I used this tool instead, which is basically very similar. I used a pencil eraser as a surface to shape the flowers on. I needed some sort of surface with a little bit of give, and the pencil eraser works perfectly for this. It's not too squishy, it just has the perfect amount of give for shaping flowers. I also shaped the leaves, although I later replaced the green leaves with the gold, as that worked better for this card. Now the cameo die comes with 2 size flowers, so I cut both to have variety on this card. For my sentiment, I foiled one that reads, Love You, My Friend. And this one comes from the Spellbinders from the Mini Sincere Sentiments set. It's actually a set packed with all sorts of sentiments, and you have loads of different messages in there. I just found mounted the foiled sentiment over the background over one of the foiled stripes. Now, I love to add dimension to my cards, so I added double-sided foam tape to the back of my negative panel, and I popped it up on an A2 white card base. Finally, I added her little neck embellishment and the bow as well. It was a little bit tricky to adhere, especially since I was placing this over a negative space. This die cut piece is slightly larger and it overlaps the paper on both sides of the negative space, so that's where I added the glue. I also added a flower onto the negative space, mimicking a flower in her hair. So even though the die cut is not there, the negative space tells us what the shape is, and I can still embellish it as if I was embellishing a positive die cut. Finally, I added gems from Pretty Pink Posh to the flower centers and also next to the wreaths, and that finished my card. So that's technique number 1, negative die cutting. Very easy to do and works with most dies. My second favorite technique is inlay die cutting. This again can be used with all sorts of dies, especially background dies, but it works well for small die cut shapes as well. Here, I foiled the same skinny stripe background plate in gold foil over craft cardstock, and I'm going to inlay the wreath into the background. To do this, I'm going to cut the wreath from this background piece. Again, I'm making sure that it is centered on the panel, as that's how I want this design to look, perfectly in the center. So here's what this looks like once cut. I am intentionally trying to keep all 3 pieces together. I'm going to gently pop the positive die cut piece out of the die, keeping the other 2 pieces intact. And then I'm going to inlay a previously cut out gold wreath into that negative space. Now, you don't have to do it this way from the back of the die cut. It was just easier for me as I didn't have to fuss around with putting the pieces back together, as I had everything stuck together with the help of the die and double-sided tape. I then added double-sided tape right over the wreath die cut and the negative panels so that it would hold it all in place. Now we can remove the die from the paper and reveal our beautiful background. Look at that. It looks amazing, I think. To finish this card, I'm just going to add a white silhouette, a simple foiled keep smiling sentiment, and then some flowers. I did die cut a shadow layer for this lady, and I used purple cardstock here, as this will make a part of my color combo. I always love to use craft and purple together. Somehow these 2 colors always look stunning on cards. I foam mounted the lady in the center of the wreath, and then added all of the embellishments to dress it up. Now, I did change the sentiment to the one that reads, "Never lose hope." It comes from the same Mini Sincere Sentiment set. And again, I embellished the card with gems. And here's a closer look at this project. My third favorite technique has actually already been shown twice in this video, and I wonder if you can guess what it is. If you want to pause the video before I say what it is and leave your guess in the comments, we could all see if any of you were right. And if not, I'm always thrilled to read your comments and maybe discover or rediscover some cool techniques for die cutting. So be sure to pause the video and go and leave your suggestions or your guesses in the comments. So my third favorite technique is layer and offset. And basically what this is you die cut the same element twice from different colors of cardstock. Once from your main color cardstock and once from the shadow color cardstock. You layer the main piece on the shadow piece and you offset it just a little bit to have that shadow show. It is super easy, but very effective in adding additional detail and interest to the card. To make this card, I dry embossed a panel of pink cardstock. This is Hero Art's Peony cardstock using Spellbinders Simply Perfect Florets embossing folder. Next, I foiled a label using the Essential Glimmer label plate, and I cut it out using a coordinating die. I foiled it on the Spellbinders Specialty Glimmer paper. It foils like butter. It's amazing. And then I die cut several blank labels. I adhered them together to create one thick chipboard-like piece and adhered that onto the embossed background. Next, I die cut the wreath from Spellbinder's Glacier cardstock. I shaped the leaves a little bit with my fingers. I popped them up slightly and then adhered onto the card using glue. Now comes the layer and offset technique. I die cut two silhouettes, one from Craft and one from Mirror Gold. I adhered Craft 1 onto the Mirror Gold and moved the top layer slightly to the right to reveal the gold shadow underneath. Here's a close-up. And you can do this with any sort of die cut, and you can offset it into any direction you want. It always looks amazing. You can also use different colors of cardstock for the shadow layer. You can try black for a more stark shadow, or a lighter color for a softer shadow. You can even try vellum if you wanted to for a really soft shadow layer. I foam mounted this silhouette onto the card. I added loads of flowers and leaves. I foam mounted the Keep Smiling Sentiment strip. It was also foiled using the mini Sincere Sentiments glimmer plates from Spellbinders, and then I embellished my card with loads of gems. So there you have it, 3 easy die cutting techniques to help you spice up your die cut cards. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'm so thankful you've joined me today. Love you guys, and I'll see you next time. Bye!